I'll just start out by saying this morning we're interviewing Jonathan Kumar, and he is the founder of a company called Samaritan. So thanks for taking the time to participate. And how are things in Seattle these days? I know there's been a lot of unrest there.
Yeah. There's a lot of human rights conversations and actions happening right now. Obviously needed. We were at the front end of the COVID-19 thing, and it's displaced a lot of people who were earning, $35,000 a year or less. And so unemployment, a lot of people are at risk for eviction. It's a challenging time for the city. The downtown area is sort of emptied out because, no one's working on site anymore. And so the result of that is that it's definitely a lot more rundown, maybe more tents coming up. It's definitely a challenging time for the city, but maybe a needed time, maybe an appropriate time.
Yeah, it struck me that this might be just the right time for what you're doing.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, can you just tell us what Samaritan does?
Sure. Yeah. The what of it is we produce smart wallets specifically designed for people experiencing homelessness.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so this is actually, I've got one on me here. It is just a little, key fob. Nothing too special. It's got a little Bluetooth chip in there, sorry. And we partner with local nonprofits that are on the ground to offer this resource to people who are on or near the street.
Mm-hmm. So that's the thing called the beacon, right?
That's the beacon. Yep.
Yeah. And what are you doing for these people? What does this what's the idea? What are you trying to do?
Yeah. So our theory of change is that a lot of the causes for situations like homelessness not just deal with a sense of financial poverty, but a profound sense of relational poverty. That adage of, you are who the 5 closest friends around you are in a lot of ways rings true in many of the stories that I hear around how people get to where they are. Relationships seem to always be a common denominator for these individuals. It's like, whether the job loss leads to a relational loss that then leads to homelessness, or the relationship loss leads to the job loss, which then leads to homelessness, or you can, put an addiction in there somewhere, or, a mental health condition that comes up. But, the common denominator almost always is a lack of a support network, a safety net. If I lose my job, or if I fall into some sort of substance use disorder, an addiction, I've got friends and family that are going to keep me housed and fed and supported through that process. But if you don't have that, that's where the street catches you. That's where you fall. So anyways, I mean to say that in that we believe that part of the route back for these individuals is, being able to surround them with with positive relationships. And so when they get their beacon, we look to provide access to both the social as well as the financial capital that they need to take steps forward and meet housing and life goals. Okay. And happy to go in that, or I can let you ask your next question.
Yeah, well, before we delve into the business model further, and we certainly want to do that, I want to understand your own background. So you just tell us your life story in a nutshell.
My life story in a nutshell, sure. Well, you have to actually go before I was even born. My parents immigrated from South India to snowy Buffalo, New York in the late 80s. And my dad had gotten, an amazing opportunity to study in the States. That was during a time in the US where, we were trying to attract talent as a country. We were trying to attract people to come and live and work and be scientists or be, entrepreneurs. a lot different back then than it is maybe today in terms of immigration. Anyway, so my dad was studying here, and my mom, they had just gotten married, and then I was born sometime afterwards. And so my mom wasn't working, and so my dad, myself, and my mom were living on a student stipend of like $600, $800 a month, which, even in the late 80s wasn't going too far.
Yeah.
So, we were on Medicaid, we were on food stamps, we were, going from broken down car to broken down car, and, entire new country, entire new climate. And, David, we quickly realized the need for it and the value of community. There was a group of people in Buffalo that basically adopted my family and provided financially, provided socially, provided maybe even culturally for my folks. And my dad graduated, got a job in Madison, and we moved, and everything from there was kind of easy street, all things considered. But you never really forget what that experience is like. Mm-hmm. And so, fast forwarding quite a bit, I went to Michigan, got my school paid for, a huge privilege, huge opportunity for me. I dabbled in film, and I started a student organization on campus. It was like a club tackle football team. It was really, really fun. No pads, but sort of this intermediate state between the intramural program and obviously, varsity football. We sort of fell right in between there. It was a great time. But yeah, I got involved with film and entrepreneurship, and I, got to be one of the first informatics graduates from the school. I did the CFE program in entrepreneurship, had a minor in econ. So I was involved in a lot of different things. Graduated with a degree in informatics, and what it applied to mostly was user experience design. So, helping design products, services, whether physical or digital, that, could help solve a problem for someone of a particular, who is experiencing some sort of barrier. And so, out of school, I'd always wanted to use my gifts for something that would, potentially help situations like my family was in, or even much worse than the one that my family was in. But, I started a company called Food Circles out of school with three friends. We actually moved to Grand Rapids as part of an incubator program out there that, the DeVos family was putting on. It was kind of a mess. But we went out there to Grand Rapids and, really worked on Food Circles for a couple of years. Food Circles was a platform that would help restaurants fill empty tables and reduce the amount of food waste they were producing. And so we were selling it to restaurants at about $1,000. $1,000 a year, and we signed up a bunch of restaurants in Grand Rapids as well as in Ann Arbor. And so our investors wanted, or early investors wanted to see us actually scale in a second market before they would invest again or what have you. And so we were like, well, we kind of need some money to go out and scale a second market. And they were like, go scale a second market and we'll give you some money. So we were sort of caught in a tough spot there, but we were looking at Madison for a second market, Chicago, San Francisco, and then also Seattle. And long story short, we ended up selecting Seattle, which was kind of this Goldilocks between Madison and San Francisco. And so we moved out here in 2015, and suffice it to say, we just weren't able to hit our milestones in terms of traction without the access to capital that we needed to raise that additional capital. And so as we were, considering closing doors, I was looking at my next step, whether to work at Google for a couple of years or an ad agency. But, I just felt, person of faith, Christian, that, God was calling me to something that had an even greater impact than maybe food circles did. And so, I was trying to think through what that might look like. And I was on some of my last lunch breaks in Seattle. And, I just remember seeing a man outdoors, and it was a nice day in Seattle. So I was sitting outside, and there was a guy who was panhandling on a street corner, maybe 50 yards away from me downtown. And, I remember him standing there, and though he was visible to me, he looked, invisible to every other person, either, driving by or walking by. His sign read, I need medication for the diabetes in my feet. And so, I sat there for about 15, 20 minutes at a distance, just observing him, trying to understand his user experience. And eventually I sort of mustered up the courage and went up and talked to him myself. And I wanted to understand more of what it was like to literally beg strangers for help with a cardboard sign. Mm-hmm. So I asked him, one of my first questions was like, what do you feel your challenges are in terms of raising this money? Again, I've got my user experience hat on, so I want to know what it's like. And I start, kind of venturing some guesses. I'm like, well, do you feel people aren't carrying cash on them these days? And he cuts me off. He's like, I've got the wrong look for this, the wrong clothing, the wrong skin color. Nobody actually believes I'm homeless. No one actually believes I am who I say I am. And it was in that moment where my heart broke as I realized that, again, beyond the sort of the financial situation that Edward was in that day, there was this profound sense of relational poverty involved that was bringing him down. And so, that really was the genesis, that and many other conversations and some of the research I started doing around direct cash transfers and, universal basic income experiments and stuff like that, that led me to develop Samaritan as a intervention to help people, again, access the social and the financial capital needed to find a home and leave the street.
All right. Now I'm going to come right back to that, but I just want to clarify. So your early experience with this food circles, was that Startup Garden where you were doing that?
Yeah, it was pre-Start Garden, actually. It was this accelerator that they had put together called Momentum. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of lessons that they learned from Momentum, they applied to Start Garden, because it was interesting, to say the least.
And Food Circle, exactly what did it do? What was the...
Yeah. Food circles allowed, restaurants to take a look at what they had too much of that week or that month. Let's say like they had too much chicken or too much mushrooms or too many desserts or whatever. And they would, to prevent them from having to waste that food, they would put it up as a buy one, feed one dish on our platform. And then so as a consumer, you could pay whatever you wanted for that specific appetizer or dessert or whatever, and the restaurant would donate that money actually to a local food bank.
Okay.
So not only were they moving product that they would have wasted, they were also supporting a nonprofit that was feeding families in the community, and they were meeting new customers doing it. So it was a pretty cool platform.
Yeah, my daughter was just telling me about an outfit that's doing that kind of on a national scale now, and I think they got a contract with Cheesecake Factory, and
really?
Operating all of it. I have to get the name of the company. I'll get it to you because I'm
sure. I mean, Cheesecake, man. I was just there with my wife the other day. It's very, very big portions, and I'm sure a ton of food waste, and so.
Yeah.
To hear that, there was a few of us, one of us got up to scale and is working with Cheesecake Factory. That's good news.
Yeah. So turning to the business model, looking at your website, I could see, possibly a few different customer segments there, but how would you describe your customers?
Well, I'm curious. I mean, our website's real bad right now, but I'd be curious to hear, like, what would your initial hypotheses be in terms of a business? Like, obviously, we're not going to charge our end beneficiary, our end user money, because they don't have any money to begin with. So where does the business come in, just from first glance?
Well, I saw two actual customer segments and possibly a third, but certainly, the people you call your members, those are the homeless people who you're, serving with the
beacon. Yeah.
The beacon. Yeah. And then the Samaritans, who are donating resources to them, donating money and this sort of thing. I mean, you're satisfying some need for them, whether it's a psychological need or desire to improve the community, that sort of thing. And then, the more interesting thing, or one of the interesting things was, the care providers, because you're connecting them with clients. And in a sense, that's what they're in business for. They, in some ways, they could monetize the relationship with those clients. So those were the three main ones that I saw. I don't know, how do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have to separate, customers from users, right? I mean, we have the end beneficiary, the person that's using the beacon is not going to be our customer. A lot of startups begin with looking at some sort of felt problem that is being experienced by a customer. Yeah. And so if you can solve something for that user, they have the ability to pay for your product or service, and you go from there. And then some businesses, they create something compelling for a group of users, and those users are not going to pay. Like, you don't pay for Facebook, you don't pay for Gmail.
Exactly.
But Gmail solves a wicked problem, making email simple and manageable. And then Google, once they have a critical mass of people using Gmail, then they sell that, that data and ads to companies that are looking to get in front of you and I.
Yeah.
So, we knew that our end user and beneficiary wasn't going to be our customer. But we have iterated through quite a bit of different revenue models. We at first were thinking, B2C, kind of what you were describing with the donors and solving that psychological problem of, I want to help, I don't know how to, I'm never carrying cash, or I don't have time to stop and engage, or, I don't know if giving cash is the best way to help. So we thought that, okay, if we can solve that problem for that donor, that potential donor, if we can unlock some of that dammed up generosity that wants to happen, we can monetize the transactions like a GoFundMe or, even Groupon or, something like that. And so we were looking at that for a while, and that was our initial, that was in our pitch decks and stuff. Can we get 20,000 people to give $5 a month? Because if we can do that, we would be generating about $250,000 a year in revenue. And that seemed doable on paper. Let me tell you that getting 20,000 people to give $5 a month is incredibly difficult and expensive. And it's not scalable in terms of how much it costs to build up that kind of traction, at least as far as I know. And in that process of working to do this B2C model, we actually got approached by a group of nonprofits that wanted to license our technology. And it wasn't like they were going to pay for it themselves. They helped us organize a contract to be paid by a real estate group downtown. So this real estate group donated the money to these nonprofits that then they contracted to us. So we were selling to nonprofits essentially. And they licensed 500 beacons from us for about $100,000 a year, which is, and is a lot of money. And so we're like, whoa, rather than trying to get 20,000 individuals to give $5 a month, why don't we just sell to organizations who can use this resource to improve the outcomes they're already working towards? And so we sort of switched from a B2C model to a B2B model, selling to nonprofits. And then we worked for a long time to validate whether cities would be a direct customer. And that was something we were able to eliminate, which is a long story. But in the process of sort of validating whether cities would pay us to do something like this, or maybe more real estate groups or whatever, we have come to understand the healthcare space and how valuable it would be for some federally qualified health clinics and some community hospitals, and also managed Medicaid, which is the insurance that foots the bill for the most poor Americans in the country. How valuable it would be for these types of entities if we could help individuals on the street or near the street have access to resources that they could use to improve their own life and improve their own self-sufficiency.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a fascinating aspect, and I do think of the users as customers in the sense that they share a value proposition, right? That's what I think of in terms of a customer. Not that they're paying you. It's exactly like Gmail or Facebook or something, and we find this a lot in these urban-focused business models, because often the people who need the service aren't the ones who are able to pay for it.
Right.
And so
it makes it complicated, but that's what urban entrepreneurship is. It's complicated. And finding a way to make it sustainable is the key. And it sounds like it sounds like the B2C direction is the one where you think you'll find the most traction and sustainability with this. The B2B model. We kind of dropped B2C.
I'm sorry, B2B.
We dropped the B2C approach maybe 2 years ago. A year ago, we just stopped monetizing the transactions. We were at first adding a little bit to each transaction that we could capture as margin. So if you were to give $10 to a beacon holder through the Samaritan app, we'd charge you, $10.75, and that 75 cents would help us pay the bills. But it just wasn't amounting to a noticeable amount of revenue. And so we just said, let's just cut that out. Or no, actually now what we have is you'll get charged $10, but you can add $1, $2, or $5, which will go to the nonprofit that is working with that individual. So it helps that organization that's on the ground. Our revenue comes from contracts and sometimes grants that are coming from these nonprofits or healthcare at this point.
So you've done away with the B2C totally.
Totally.
It's B2B. And so so there's another fascinating aspect to this, which is just how you go about getting these new members, these new users. And if you face resistance from them, I saw some mention on your website, people are worried about, are you tracking me, this sort of thing. How does that go? How do you go about getting these new users and getting people to wear the beacon? Or is that?
It's a great question. It's a great question, and a question that I often get, but not from the end beneficiaries themselves, and I'm not sure why that is. We keep it a goal to have our messaging be as simple and as clear and as humble and open as we possibly can. And so when we are giving these beacons to nonprofits to pass along to people they're trying to serve, we're just saying, hey, keep it very simple in terms of explaining what this is, and just say, hey, this thing, we literally instruct them to use the word thing. This thing helps you accept credit card donations from people who want to help. You can use it to store your IDs are important documents on here, and it's free. Would you want one? And the uptake or the enrollment rate is just so high, because I think like the individuals on the street, like they may trust that nonprofit to have their best interest in mind. So it helps where it's coming from, versus someone that may even look like they have some sort of agenda. So it helps that it's coming from a trusted source, and when something is communicated truthfully and with with the desire to help. I think people are willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. And we see about 6 or 7 out of 10 people who are invited to have a beacon end up accepting it, which, we can improve, of course, but we're proud that that is the case, because in terms of seeing people accept services, in this situation where they're on the street and they get offered quite a bit of stuff, like 70% is very, very high in terms of service acceptance rate. So you don't hear about that as much as you might think from the end beneficiary themselves. It comes up from time to time, but we just open the beacon up and there's hardly anything in it. There's no GPS unit, there's no Wi-Fi capabilities. It's got a small watch battery that uses that emits a Bluetooth signal, which is used for nearby giving. So if someone with the Samaritan app walks within 30 yards of a beacon holder, they'll actually get a little advertisement on their phone saying like, hey, here's my story, you can support me, which helps generate transactions. And it also is used to help with authentication. So if I steal your beacon and I try and use it at a partnered merchant or at a nonprofit, the Bluetooth signal actually helps it show up as your beacon and not mine. So there's some security measures involved as well that help. So yeah, we see a pretty high uptake rate.
Okay, well, that's good. So how do you attract just the regular citizens, the Samaritans, to download the app and use it? How do you gain that customer segment?
Yeah, so when we got that contract to do the 500 beacons as part of the Seattle pilot, those nonprofits left it up to us and basically gave us the risk of getting the social and financial capital organized from the community. Like they didn't want to do that part, so they had us do it. You know what? I think I just recognized the street behind you. By the way, that's got to be Fifth Avenue. The monorail is behind you.
Okay.
Anyways, so they.
Oh yeah, I see it. Yeah.
They had us do it. So we actually were hoping that they would let us use their email. These nonprofits have like some big email lists and their social media and stuff like that, but they didn't want us to. They're like, go find it yourself. So it was just very grassroots. We had been sending out emails to supporters in Seattle, and so we used email, we used social, we used lunch and learns at companies and faith communities like churches especially, would invite one of us and probably a beacon holder as well to come and share our story and their story. And we got a fair amount of press just because there's not a lot of innovation happening in the space. And so it was just a mix of things, and word spreads when you're doing something different in this space, at least. And so it was a lot of organic reach, word of mouth, that sort of thing. And so in the Seattle pilot, we probably had maybe 12 or 13,000 people sign up, and not all of them, got real involved, but that group of people gave more than $100,000 to this group of 500 people, over the course of, I think, 2 years.
So to get this app, they would just sign up online, or they just download the app in response to appeal from your people.
Yeah, I mean, they would read about it again. They'd read about it online, or they'd hear about it from a coworker, see it on the news, see it on social. We didn't have a paid marketing budget almost by any means. We were doing some things like we had like the buses and the trains in Seattle donate about 50% of the cost to run like an ad during the holidays saying, well, the basic message was like, you don't have to walk by these people anymore. You don't have to ignore them anymore. You can download the Samaritan app and learn their story and invest in their path off the street.
Okay. And then for this group of service providers, so that's the those are the other B in the B2B, right?
Right.
So how do you recruit them? How do you gain them as customers?
I'd say that would be the harder part. You talk about like trying to sign up people who are experiencing homelessness, and that relatively speaking is the easy part.
Mm-hmm.
The harder part is, trying to convince, underpaid, overworked or organizations that are on the ground trying to serve these people that your technology can help them do their job better. That can be challenging. But, in Seattle, it was a group of organizations that we, just kept going back to and spending time with and tried to understand what it is that would help their case managers and what would help their clients that are on the street. And, just a lot of determination and, honesty and humility and time spent with these organizations. And, they eventually come to trust you, and they said, let's pilot this, and you go from there. And now, we have a contract started in Oklahoma City and then Orange County as well, where, we heard from, these organizations, and they wanted to use what we had used in Seattle. And so we're in the process of, getting them beacons that they are offering as a resource for their the people they're trying to serve.
So that kind of thing sounds like a more traditional sales thing, where you have, somebody who's calling on these municipalities or these organizations in these different places. So is that how it works? Is that how you sign people up? You go see them, you have a meeting, you have them sign a contract, that sort of thing?
Yeah. It's traditional B2B sales in that regard. I mean, we do get some inbound, people hear about us all over the country, write in and stuff. Or, we get warm introductions from advisors or nonprofits or, people we're connected to at this point, to an organization's executive director or something like that. Mm-hmm. We go from there, and selling to nonprofits is challenging because, there's a lot of barrier to resistance to change. And even when they're convinced, there's a very, very real lack of technology budget and things like that. And if they want to use Samaritan, they often will need to appeal for outside funding, which can be very complicated, or we will have to help find a third-party funder mm-hmm. for them. Which we can do and have done. But we know that we're getting to know how that vertical works, and we're executing on it. It's possible. There are some successful technology companies who have nonprofits as their primary customer. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of like the most recognizable one. There's like some Salesforce type solutions that are sold to nonprofits. Mm-hmm. They call them CRMs. Yep. And yep. There are some companies like donation. So CRMs and like e-commerce donor management platforms. Those are probably the most successful things, kind of like GoFundMe or Salesforce, but geared for nonprofits.
Yeah.
There have been some successful companies there. So, we're operating in that space, and, we're getting some of our legs under us in terms of providing this resource to reach people in need, because it has helped a lot of folks improve their life situation, and get into housing or get into employment or get into recovery. And now, again, like I said earlier, we're getting into some of the healthcare use cases, and that's actually what I'll be focusing on these next couple months. It's interesting. I'm calling to you from Portland, Oregon, so Seattle, and I'm flying out of Portland this evening to go to Minneapolis, where I'll be for about 2 months to work with United Healthcare, which just took us into their business accelerator.
Yeah.
Because of how important it is for them to help their poorest, highest risk, most vulnerable members, their insurance members, have resources to take care of some of these social factors that can keep them out of the hospital.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because I was just talking with a friend of mine who helps me with the course, and his daughter works for, I believe it's United Healthcare. She may have moved, but he was telling me months ago that these healthcare companies with the managed Medicare,
Yep.
They get an amount of money for that depends on the risk factors associated with each of those individuals that they're serving.
Right.
And so one of her jobs was to write these cases up for these individuals to maximize the amount of money that United Healthcare would get. And so we were talking about this just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
I was saying I was wondering if you guys were involved in that chain, because it is of tremendous value to them to have new clients and to be able to write up, the risk factor and serve these clients, right? And to make sure these clients get service. So
that's interesting. Yeah, that's actually good to hear more about that.
Yeah, so maybe I could connect you with
Sure.
my buddy Reggie's daughter, and
Sure.
she can tell you about it from their point of view.
Yeah, that'd be pretty valuable, actually.
So give me some examples of some of these care provider customers, just 3 or 4 examples.
Sure. So you have like your traditional social services, so that'd be like a Salvation Army or a St. Vincent de Paul. Or a city contracted outreach team. A city contracted outreach team would be people that you see who are walking streets and connecting with people that are on the sidewalk and asking them if they need help or resources. So that's sort of your traditional social services segment, and then you have kind of within that, federally qualified health clinics who are paid to provide healthcare to these individuals, and sometimes social services as well. And so they could use Samaritan to actually attract and kind of roll people into their own services and keep them engaged, and generate revenue that they are contracted for. So FQHCs is kind of a subset of social services, community health worker organizations. And then you're looking at a different segment, which we would think of as hospitals or health systems. Typically ones that are nonprofit, community-oriented, public hospitals even. And these organizations are receiving the downstream impact of homelessness on a daily, hourly basis. When David, like when you're exposed to the elements, when you're exposed to abuse, trauma, violence, substances, when you don't have a safe place to sleep at night, steady place to sleep at night, you don't have the right food, transportation, access to utilities or employment, you tell me how much more likely are you to end up going to the ER, either out of necessity or because you just need a warm place to go for a night.
Yeah. And
the cost of that service, which these hospitals will provide, sort of unconditionally, is immense. And so, we'll work with hospitals to administer a beacon because, if it helps these individuals access the social and the financial capital to take care of some of those upstream needs, then their likeliness to end up coming back to the ER to have a conversation with a nurse and to have a sandwich and a warm place to stay for the night goes down dramatically. Mm-hmm. So, that's a care provider segment that we're looking at, community hospitals. And then you work one level up to managed Medicaid, and they're not always going to be a care provider, but they're going to be potentially a customer that will give us the money to manage and serve this population. And then we can contract basically a care provider on the ground to, administer the resource.
Okay. So then what are currently the different revenue streams for Samaritan at this point?
At this point, we've had experience selling to nonprofits, licensing the technology, 500 beacons a year for $100K, is what we did in Seattle for 2 years. And then we did, another 200 beacons for about $116K to a nonprofit in Orange County. That nonprofit got that $116K from a community foundation to pay for it, basically. And then the group in Oklahoma City, they was like, $38K for 75 beacons, and they got that money from the United Way. So, if these nonprofits have their resources and they can write out for grants, or we can help them write out for grants to afford the technology. So we've done that, and then we're in negotiations and conversations with a series of hospitals and a handful of payers, managed Medicaid payers, about getting this resource to people that they're paying for operationally or financially right now.
Yeah. So then that would be, I would assume that if you're bringing them clients, the revenue you would get for that would be more than just paying for the beacons.
Yeah, I mean, we're not trying to bring them clients. In some cases, we're trying to help them stay away from the hospital or submit less claims.
Yeah.
For FQHCs, it is a matter of kind of bringing them clients. But yes, we're trying to make this eventual transition from cost-based pricing, where we're pricing our product or our intervention based on what it costs us, the hardware, the software, the data, the time, plus some margin.
Yeah,
we're trying to eventually price based on the value that we're creating.
Yes. Yeah.
So if this let's say you give 10 beacons out and 5 of those individuals throw the beacon away, but the other 5, they're able to improve we call them social determinants of health. These risk factors around, are they housed? Do they have access to good food, transportation, social support, professional support, emotional well-being? Like if they improve these factors, there's sort of a researched link between that and reduced hospital utilization. So for 5 of those, let's say they reduced so 5 out of the 10, there's no negligible difference in hospital utilization.
Yeah.
There is a negligible difference. And then for 4, let's say they reduce their hospitalizations by 10%. They make 1 less visit a year.
Yeah.
And that reduced visit saves the hospital $5,000.
Yeah.
So we would say, okay, pay us $1 for every 5 you save, pay us, $1,000.
Yeah.
And then for 1 out of the 10, the remaining last person, they actually improve their social determinants by a huge amount, and they actually get into housing, or they get into a full-time job, or they get into addiction recovery treatment.
Yeah.
They by research, they would reduce their utilization by, hospital visits or ER visits by 50% or more.
Yeah.
And so for this population, we're talking about saving a hospital or a health system or managed Medicaid potentially $25,000 for just 1 person.
Yeah.
I
was thinking about it from the other side, I think, in that if you're bringing an insurer, a managed Medicaid client, and based on the risk factors, that client is worth $1,000 a month to them, or $1,500. Why shouldn't you get $100 a month based on that, bringing them that client?
Right. Right. So it's funny, it works like that for commercial clients. So commercial meaning commercial members. So it'd be like that for if we can help an insurance company acquire more companies, like, University of Michigan or Google or Facebook, to have their employees sign up for United Healthcare insurance versus another group like Aetna or Kaiser, that makes sense. But for this managed Medicaid, the margins are so slim, and so many of these individuals are going to cost more than they are receiving in terms of that annual fee they get paid, their premium. So let's give you an example. For this segment of the population, they may get $8,000 a year from the federal government to insure. But many of these individuals are costing more like $70,000 to $80,000 a year in terms of healthcare. Mm-hmm. And so they would look at Samaritan and say, can you help us mitigate some of our losses? Can you help this person go from $70,000 to $80,000 a year to $30,000, $35,000 a year? Because, we're not going to make money on them under any circumstance. Yeah. But if you can help us reduce losses, that's like making money. And so we can redirect those funds to, a variety of things. Yeah. A lot of these health plans that we would be looking at working with, not United Healthcare, but some nonprofit health plans actually would then redirect that savings. Let's say they save $35,000 to more like upstream interventions. They could help sponsor a food bank in a community, or help launch a grocery store in a food desert, or sponsor cooking classes for underserved populations, how to use vegetables. Like those sorts of things is what they want to be doing with their tax write-off donation dollars. They don't want to be paying for direct medical costs.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of other revenue streams, are you still getting a piece of when somebody makes a donation?
No, we turned that off. Like I said, we didn't see any point.
Okay. So going over to the cost side, what do your costs look like? I mean, I know you got to make these beacons, you got to market, you got to distribute. What's your cost breakdown?
It's mostly talent. I mean, it's the classic startup, shared office space. We're all working from home right now. So our overhead is very low in terms of, fixed infrastructure costs. We have people use their own laptops and stuff like that. Hardware is cheap. It's like, $5 a unit. They're actually manufactured by a US based company that is in LA, and they love us and we love them. So it's mostly talent, right? It's human capital that is the most valuable and most expensive piece of Samaritan. So we're getting close to 10 employees. We're excited about that. We have about eight or nine right now, working on that.
What are the roles?
About half technical, half non-technical. So, we had, half 4 or 5 engineers, 4 or 5 non-technical. We sort of divide what we do into 2 different buckets. And it's not engineering, non-engineering. It's like, we have a group of people who are primarily focused on getting more social and financial capital to existing members, existing beacon holders. And so the way that we measure that is obviously how many dollars we're giving them on a monthly basis, but more importantly, how many Samaritans are on their team. Every beacon holder has a team, and we work to grow the amount of people that are on their team, basically who are committing to doing one favor a month for that person. So that'll include the professional case manager or the mental health clinician, what have you, but it also includes volunteers from the community who are, sending in a message of encouragement, or who are offering to do a phone call with them and just spend some time, or who are putting money on their beacon for them to meet a financial need. When we can provide these social homes to people, by better marketing, by improving the technology, the physical home comes sometime afterward. And so we have a group of people that are focused on growing those teams, those micro communities who are surrounding specific individuals until they go the distance and reach housing, or maybe beyond that. And then the other side of the coin is growing how many people have access to Samaritan. Because like I mentioned, we did 500 people in Seattle. We have a lot more work to do in Seattle. We're just starting off in Oklahoma City and Orange County. But there's just like such a huge opportunity here to serve. And so that's the other side is growing how many people have access to Samaritan, which is basically, inbound, outbound marketing and sales. So that's mostly non-technical, but we have some technical help there as well.
You have to have people on the ground in each of these communities doing the, recruiting people into the program. You mentioned that the service providers weren't going to do that for you.
Yeah, yeah. In terms of, so I think you mean organizing the Samaritans in each city?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So we're trying to, there's nothing happening in person in the world right now anyways. So, but no, I think we'll have we're actually recruiting a role right now, a digital storyteller who will, be based where they're based, ideally in Seattle, but doesn't really matter at this point. And they will work through digital means to equip, Samaritans in Oklahoma City or, Orange County or Albuquerque, New Mexico, wherever.
Would you use like a Facebook platform or?
Yeah, yeah, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Google Ads and email marketing and all sorts of things, press, PR. They'll try to partner with a nonprofit in some ways. Nextdoor is like this app full of people who are neighbors and are always complaining about homelessness. So
I'm on Nextdoor.
Yeah, always complaining about vagrancy and stuff like that. So, there'll be some grassroots means that we use to, and it's not even, what we're trying to do is get about, 10 Samaritans per beacon holder right now. And eventually we want that number to be 30. But so, if you're giving out 100 beacons, that's about 1,000 people. It's not impossible to get 1,000 people onto a platform. Especially for something as sort of like meaningful as this.
Mm-hmm. Well, this kind of leads me to, and that certainly sounds like a big activity area for you. What are the biggest activity areas for you and your staff? What do you have to
right now? Yeah, right now it's growth. So, getting more people access to a beacon. Yeah. That's like basically my job description. Jason on my team and Ashish on my team and they're primarily working on getting more people access to a beacon, aka sales. So that's probably the biggest right now.
And then on the technical side of things, what are the activities there?
Yeah, technical, like I said, there's some, stuff we're having them do in terms of inbound marketing, like our website, for example, or, outbound stuff. But most of it is product development, improving the Samaritan app to get more people, get existing users access to more social and financial capital, cultivating the Samaritan app to be more of an engaging experience that increases the amount that people are giving or increases the amount of teams that people are joining. Or we have a provider app and that app is used by care providers to give beacons out, to help people set goals, to update their social determinant status, produce a lot of data. So that operational side is where a lot of the technology efforts are going as well.
Now, it seems like you could scale to a lot of places very quickly if you had the right partners, right? Yeah. You mentioned United Healthcare, outfits like this. What partners do you have now, and what partners would you like to have to help you build this thing out?
Well, United Healthcare is probably the biggest one that we'd like to have. I mean, they're generating about $500 million in revenue every day.
Didn't they buy CVS? Or
maybe, yeah.
If you could go to any CVS store and get signed up and get a beacon.
Yeah, or use your beacon to buy over-the-counter products. That'd be so useful. So, that's sort of our dream partnership. And that's actually, what we're at the very beginning stages of. So we're excited about that. We have some stuff happening in New York. I can't really talk about it quite yet with, a health plan and some nonprofits on the ground there. I sort of forgot your question, actually.
I was just saying, what partnerships do you have now, and which would you like to have going forward?
Yeah. You're right in saying that we could quickly deploy if we had the right partners on the ground. And so that is the thing. If we had in every major U.S. city from Baltimore to San Diego, if we just had one or a few nonprofits or community hospitals or health clinics, like as a partner, we could get this resource to tens of thousands of people on the street very quickly.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of building that network.
Yeah. And then from a financial standpoint, what do your resources look like there, and how are you structured financially?
So we're a public benefit corporation, which is a regular company, but we have an explicit social mission that we can work to maximize the social impact of what we do. The reason we chose to be a company instead of a nonprofit is because first off, access to capital for startup nonprofits is still very limited. And it's limited as it is, but then if you say that you're trying to build technology and not offer services, like if you're not trying to offer food to a community or offer shelter or offer water, or, job training or something like that, like direct service, if you're saying, I want to build an app or I want to build beacons or I want to build a website, like it's going to be hard for you to attract money. So unfortunately, and I don't think that's an ideal case. I think that there should be funding for nonprofits to be able to work on scalable solutions like Samaritan. But because there isn't, we had to go that corporate route. And so as a public benefit corporation, we can raise money from investors without issue. And that's what we've done. A mix of, double bottom line investors, people who are interested in the business model and potentially generating a return on their money, but also in the meaning of seeing something like Samaritan be successful, like how that might make the world a better place.
So is it a nonprofit or is it
So yeah, public benefit corporation is just structured like a regular company.
Okay. So investors can get a return on their investment as
correct.
A result of. So
yeah, but we don't have to choose between maximizing profit and impact because we have a mission in our corporate charter.
Yeah. And so how is that investment structured now? Who are the investors now? Are they individuals? Do you have some seed investment from venture capital? How's that set up?
Yeah, for something as new and risky as this, you're not going to be able to attract a lot of venture capital up front. Yeah. We're just starting to get into that, and we're like 4 years in. But so, it was mostly angel investment. We also had some had some revenue, so that was helpful as well. So yeah, the way that we've paid our bills is a mix of revenue, angel investment, and grants. We were able to receive some grants for different organizations in different ways. But in this most recent round of funding, we were able to attract some early stage venture capital as well. The most notable would actually be from Techstars and United Healthcare. Okay. So United Healthcare is an investor, which is really good. Yeah. And Techstars facilitated their investment. So the fact that they are part owners of Samaritan is, again, they don't care about small startups that when they're making the money that they're making, but it formalizes the relationship, and I think brings the right people to the right side of the table in terms of actually getting this resource out to more people.
Is that investment structured as convertible note or?
Yes, actually.
Yeah. Okay. So what is it that where would you like this to be, say in 5 years?
Yeah, the vision is 5 years. Let's see, but we're going to do everything that we can. Is that any person on or near the street, again, would have access to the social and the financial capital needed to reach housing and life goals. And we expect to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm. So what businesses or services out there would you regard as competitors or substitutes, for what you're doing?
Yeah, the biggest competitor is probably inaction, but going with methods and resources that these nonprofits or community hospitals are already using, but in terms of companies, There's not a lot of direct competitors, but indirect, there's plenty. There are competitors in that there are companies that are providing, like I said, Salesforce type tools, GoFundMe type tools around fundraising, around client, like managing your caseload or your homeless clients.
Yeah.
There are solutions that are focused on data, like representing data and exchanging data from one organization to the next when, a person goes from a hospital to a social care organization. So there are some data providers and CRM solutions and donation solutions that are pretty well entrenched. And though we don't do what they do, we don't try and compete with them. Our solution is more about behavior change and resource delivery than managing data. Even with that being the case, we're still going after some of the same budgets. So, some of the similar companies, if people want to Google them, would be like Unite Us or Social Solutions or Collective Medical, Healthify is another one, and Bertha. But the good news is, because we're different, we can partner with them. And the other good news is they've been able to raise some of these organizations that I've mentioned have raised some significant capital, $50 million type money.
Wow.
And they could also be potential acquirers of Samaritan if they saw a strategic advantage that we could bring to them. Yeah. So we're working on some of those partnerships right now.
Well, one of the things I always say too is it's good if people are competing over helping people who need help.
That's right. That's a good point.
Yeah. So how has COVID-19 affected the business?
Well, like you said, earlier, there's a lot of people who might need a resource like Samaritan more than ever. Especially if you're on the street, like coffee shops are closed, barber shops are closed. There's just nowhere for you to go sit, charge your phone, chill, use the bathroom. Those sorts of things are taken away. Public, shelters are reduced in terms of capacity, stuff like that. So a lot more people living outside, which is not safe all the time anyways. But the challenge is, even though there's higher demand from our end user, there's lower capacity from frontline care providers to listen to new interventions in a time like COVID-19. Where their funding has been cut, or their operations are challenged, or both. And, for us to come in and say, hey, we have a new resource for you to use, there's talk to us in a year. And so it's been challenging for us, and we've missed all of our sales and growth projections this year, which sucks, and stuff like that. So, we're coming out of it a little bit. I think a lot of the conversations that were sort of frozen in March and April are sort of thawing out in August and entering September here. So, we're picking up, and, we're advancing a lot of conversations around deploying this resource. So, things are looking up and up, but that would be the main challenge.
So what would you say would be your biggest concern at this point about the business?
That's a good question. I don't think I've thought about that too recently.
Well, usually you don't have to think too much about your biggest concern, and it keeps you up at night.
That's right. Yeah, biggest concern. I think the deployment at Oklahoma City, I want to make sure that goes really well, and Orange County. We don't want to screw those up, and there have been some operational issues that have come up that have been kind of concerning. But I think, it's part of the learning process. It's one thing to do something in your hometown or your local market, and then the moment you try and hand it off to someone across the country, that second city, or that second city, that those are learning experiences. And so, we're working through some of those logistics and stuff like that. So that, I think, is something that we think we're concerned about. But then, what keeps us up at night is really will we be able to convert on any of these healthcare conversations and successfully get to people in need via managed Medicaid or hospitals? I would say all of the indicators are positive. I mean, the fact that we got in with United Healthcare and, a couple other groups that we're talking to, it seems like we're moving in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, the mission is pretty ambitious. I mean, in 5 years, and I think that, provides plenty of motivation.
Yeah. So this money that gets donated to people from the Samaritans, where is it stored? Do you have a financial partner? You work with a bank that is the repository for these funds?
Yeah. I mean, we use a payment processor. I mean, we work with PayPal, and then also PayPal and also Braintree to process, and then it comes through PayPal and Braintree into our bank, and then but the money is stored on the beacon. So we associate these beacons with the person's account, and any of our nonprofits using Samaritan can pick the beacon up and see the person's balance and their photo to make sure it's their beacon. And then they can order literally anything that they can think of for that client through the Samaritan app. And so we're working on the fulfillment side, so they can order things off of Amazon, or they can order a check to be sent to a landlord or to a storage locker facility. They can pay for phone bills, bus fare, grocery gift cards. And so we act as sort of like a fulfillment service to push the money from our bank account to the landlord, or to AT&T phone plan, or to a bus card, that sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah. So that's mainly, I think you've given me a really good picture of the overall, and it's exciting. It sounds, as I say, like just the kind of thing that is needed out there. And I love these sustainable for-profit solutions to
hopefully sustainable.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the key, because if you can do that, then you can eliminate homelessness, right? If it's profitable for somebody to help eliminate it. And
if we could, remove some of the inefficiencies around getting capital to people. Like at the end of the day, we're trying to put money in people's hands and put a good community of supporters around them.
Yeah.
It's funny, like for how pervasive something like homelessness is. And I mean, we're talking about probably 1 million people. The amount of people that are housed and resourced, who could do something for someone in need, greatly outnumbers the population in need.
And making it easy for them to do that. A lot of people want to do it, but they just don't know how to do it. And to be
we'll be that low-hanging fruit for sure.
Yeah. And to know that you're not being hustled also. Just to know the story and to know that you're helping somebody really. Well, is there anything that I haven't touched on about the business, or anything you want to bring out that we haven't talked about so far?
Yeah, like the last thing I'll kind of add was some of the core data from our Seattle pilot in terms of outcomes. So I think it's really remarkable and worth bringing up. So, from the 500 people who got access to a beacon in Seattle, we actually saw about 50% of them, churn out pretty, over the course of a couple months. But we're measuring our impact by looking at self-sufficiency ratings in these 8 different life categories. Again, we call them social determinants of health.
Yeah.
So housing is a big one. And I mentioned some of the others like food or transportation, access to utilities like a cell phone or a storage locker. And so we saw an improvement in these social determinants for 54% of the individuals who got a beacon. So 274 folks out of the 500. From the 274, 51 of them actually improved their determinants to such an extent that they actually got into housing, got into a job, got into some treatment program, and those case studies are on our website. And I definitely encourage you to take a look at some of those stories of real people who were able. We didn't help them off the street. they helped them off the street. But they were able to use the social and the financial resources that we were able to help them access to do that thing. We didn't, we don't take credit for these outcomes. They're due to the person themselves and the nonprofit that was working with them.
Yeah.
But we were able to, facilitate some additional resources to be put in their life that they used. Anyways, there's these amazing stories that I definitely recommend checking out and reading. And I'll say that. I'll say that anyone can download the Samaritan app and be on someone's team, even if there isn't a beacon holder in your city. You can, try it out for yourself, and you can invest in a beacon holder in Seattle, Orange County, or Oklahoma City, and just, really see what it's like to be a Samaritan.
Yeah.
So I'd encourage all your students to do that.
Do that myself.
Yeah, absolutely, David. That'd be fantastic. We would love to have your investment into one of our homeless users. So there's that. We also, like I said, are open to working in more communities or providing our technology to more communities. So your students are going to be coming from all over the country, and so if any of them knows of either a nonprofit or a clinic that's serving the homeless in their city, and they want, to have them get some of these beacons, they can definitely connect the dots between our team and their team, that nonprofit. And the last thing I'll say is that we looked at the average amount of time, money, and Samaritans that it took for those 51 people to radically improve or change their life. And the findings was pretty shocking. The amount of money on average was $444 over 6 months. And it involved maybe 8 to 10 Samaritans on their team. So we're talking about $80 a month here, which is not a lot of money. And I think, is evidence of the impact that the social capital, like the people capital, has on an individual. That it's not nearly just about putting money in people's hands, it's putting people around people.
Yeah, connecting them.
And so, we're stoked, because I think that sometimes it can seem challenging to, raise a lot of financial donations for individuals. But again, I think we're hitting on something here that I truly believe that there are at least 30 plus people that could surround every person on or near the street in the US.
Yeah.
And if we can start doing some more of that and providing social homes to people, the physical home can come sometime after that.
Yeah.
Pretty excited. Obviously, this is a great opportunity.
I think you're really onto something. I think this, I see this as something that could really grow rapidly and really serve, as you say, a lot of people. So, and I'm sure the students will be excited to hear about it and excited to think about the modeling of this whole thing. So, I appreciate you taking the time, and I will keep you apprised as to what we come up with, and I'll send you the interview when we finish editing it up as well.
Yeah, I'd love to have access to it. Thanks so much, Professor Tarver, for having me. And sorry I couldn't do it in more of a dynamic way this fall. Hopefully we'll get to meet in person on campus someday.
Yeah, definitely. Let me know when you're in town.
For sure, I will.
All right, Jonathan. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Go Blue.
Go Blue.
Yeah.
Take care.